Hello and welcome. This is Stalnore, and here are some of my thoughts on the changes Robocraft has taken during my time playing the game. I'm not sure what I will play in the background. I'm leaning towards old screenshots of robots past. And I will also most likely put some annotations for stuff that happened recently and my end thoughts. But let's get started. I started playing in Robocraft during August 2014 after seeing the Yogscast play the game. For any new players watching this, back then the game was completely different. We had pilot seats that the bot had to be made around. If you lost the seat, you would die. We had a tech tree that you could choose your path in. We only had 3 guns, SMG, plasma and rails. We had wheels, hover wings, thrusters and helium as movement pieces. All these and armor cubes came in many varieties to fit in each tier. The tiers were 10 in number and the matchmaking was based around these tiers. This was a fun time where you could start as a new player, be fairly safe and then slowly move up the tiers. The experienced user could also go back and try to build the best they could for any tier, either using overtier weapons or some fun design. We also had a repair cost that made it so you couldn't just rush the enemy and die. You needed to be careful. Also, there didn't exist any auto heal or healing at all. Once you took damage, you couldn't get rid of it. Now, moving on with updates. On the 8th of October, the Rise of the Walkers patch came out and adding insect legs and nanos. Insect legs was a fun thing to use and wasn't overpowered. More on the other scale as they were big and didn't have much health. But they brought a new fun way to play the game. And yes, they acted weird when losing one of them, and they tended to flip upside down back then also. The Nano was completely different from the current iteration in that it could deal damage, and it started off being overpowered by having an auto-aim attack mode that aimed directly at the pilot seat, and therefore being able to kill the enemy incredibly fast. This was later changed, and having a dedicated healer became a great boon to your team. Matchmaking later got changed so that it took into consideration on the weapon class of the bots, so that you didn't have a team full of just healers. With this patch, repair cost was also removed and boss mode was introduced. Boss mode had a big bot, tier 7 and upwards, fight against many smaller bots. This could be fun, but it ended up being more of a seal clubbing fest that just killed small bots. Was a good feeling if you could kill the boss though. The real issue with the game mode was that you could not opt out of it. When you were playing in lower tiers, you would very frequently get into a boss game, and the likelihood of you winning was slim. So this took up time and you died a lot. People who could not win with the bots in the higher tiers, in normal games, brought them to the boss mode so they could feel good about themselves. Premium was also changed now to give 100% extra RP, but also give every other player in the game 5% extra. So it was a win-win kind of deal. I even remember seeing people say thanks to premium users back then for giving them some extra free RP. Moving on. Before the next big update, we had some cosmetics come out that was available only for buying it with the GC, real money. We didn't give any advantage, but we came with pre-made bots of varying quality. After this, the next big patch was released on the 9th of December. Tanks are rolling out. These featured tank tracks that were slow, tanky, moving pieces that took up much space and had mounting points on them. The tank tracks drove like tank tracks, so you could make very fast turns with 2 tracks when standing still. The downside of these were that they were much slower than other movement pieces and therefore weren't overpowered. A new weapon was added in form of a melee Tesla blade. These were fragile, high damage weapons that had a limited charge on them. If you rammed a bot with them, one charge will go off and deal massive damage. This weapon was most used as a +1 tier weapon, both by the players and 3M's own shop bots. This was due to their damage wasn't really high enough to be used in their own tier. RP rewards were lowered, but the hero bonus was added into the game and offered players that died for the good of the team an extra boost of RP and TP after the team won the game. Also, during this patch, the difference between everything was decreased, so that overtiering wasn't as powerful as before. This was most likely due to people with +3 tier rails owning people. Diminishing returns is introduced. This meant that you could not spam T2 thrusters to get a wheeled bot to grip and climb vertical cliffs. These stats were shown on the blocks affected. During Christmas, skis were released. They kinda felt like a joke piece, but was actually fun. Having 25 CPU per ski, only being in a T5 variety, and needed to have thrusters to move, they were not initially used very much. Around the same time, the physics were changed so that you could push your fellow bots, much like how you could in single-player practice. There also was a security hole that enabled an attack on the game, and the patch was brought back. The physics changes never came back, and you can only push bots in single-player now. At the start of the new year, Speedometer and Altimeter was released as Yeezy only part. This gave information about your bot's speed and height. Some people felt that they didn't really give anything essential, but some claimed they were paid to win kind of deal, paying people more information. Later in January, Mega SMGs was released as a preload to Megabots. This was a very large gun that dealt a lot of damage but was inherently not very good as it took up a lot of space and CPU. More information about matchmaking was also given to us. We now would know the bot class of each player and if they were a flyer or not. It was also around this time T10 rails got 3 consecutive buffs with lowered reload time, a 25% damage buff, and then another 25% damage buff to all rails. Needless to say, it became extremely overpowered. Mega wheels were added. This part were big, cost massive CPU, and did not have enough health for the size of CPU cost to be viable in normal games. They weren't, and were never supposed to, as they were made for Megabots. Mega electric plates came out next and saw some actual use on regular bots. Mostly on flyers, but there were some healer bots with heavy anti-air protection with them. All in all, they were made for Megabots and cost too much CPU to be truly viable. On the 18th of February, Megabots was released. These beasts had 5 times the CPU of regular bots and was only allowed to use Megabots as functional parts. They were placed with the T10 bots and each team had one of them. At first, Megas felt like a fun addition and were endless possibilities for fancy designs. After time, it became clear that the Megas had made T10 into a game of following the Mega, and designated healers that only healed the Mega and ignored everyone else became a common occurrence. With the Megas only being able to use Mega parts, players with low RP could not afford a top-of-the-line Mega, and as there was only one Mega per team, having a bad Mega on your team affected the gaming experience. With the Mega Launch update, we also got Rotorblades, a new helicopter style that was made to have an easy way to make airbots that could stay still in the air. Previously, helium-focused builds did this part. Now these bots became bad because of the trade in massive amount of CPU to make a helium bot that could stay in the air. Now you just used some Rotorblades. A TX cube was released. It was the strongest and lightest of the cubes, but cost 3 CPU per cube. This made it possible to build small bots that still could be strong. Boss mode was changed, so now you had 2 game modes. You had Challenger mode that had 4 high tier bots versus several low tier bots. This was a big seal clubbing game mode, and as a low tier player you still didn't have a choice about it. We received a new boss mode that was 1 megabot versus several high tier bots. This game mode favored the mass of players as they would just shoot off the guns of the Mega. And surviving as a Mega became a cowering in base and pick off enemies as they came in low numbers. This game mode was also forced on the non-boss players. The previous rectifier block got removed and replaced with a more reliable inbuilt function. A mirror tool was also added, so these things made the game easier in a way that didn't matter much to the actual gameplay. Then 3M announced that they were going to change the game. No more will we be dead when we die. We would respawn and we would also overclock as we went on in the game. The game would also be objective based, with you attacking and capturing towers to get rid of the enemy shield around their destructible base tower. So you are saying, this is Battle Arena, nothing big about that. Originally it was going to replace the game mode now known as Team Deathmatch completely. But we fought for it and we got it to stay. Some other things that 3M talked about wanting to implement in the 3-part release of Battle Arena was supercomputers that would replace the pilots with abilities. This was never implemented, and some of the abilities became the modules we have now. They also said they would add 2 new game modes: the Hub, a friendly social game mode with no actual combat, it was never released, and the Pit, a never-ending deathmatch mode that I will talk about later. 3M also gave answers to what if I get disconnected, that they would allow people to reboot and be able to join again. This has never been implemented. Before the new meta was released, we got Mega Plasmas that were a very big version of Plasma that did 2 shots of Plasma at about the damage of 2 T8 Plasmas. They were tried out but felt too weak on both regular bots and on Megas. A bit later, Mega Hovers got released and at start were completely unusable on a regular bot as they had much lower carry weight for some reason than regular Hovers. This was fixed later, but they are still too big and clunky to be used on regular bots. Then there was more information leading up to the actual release of the new meta, like explaining resistivity and proteinivity. 30th April, release of Robocraft Respawn and Overclocked. A new game mode having 4 capturable towers, respawning and leveling up. After the initial release with several bug fixes, fixing towers not being capable over and over again, the actual game mode might have been fun for certain people, but the biggest flaw of the game mode in my opinion was the aspects that actually made it into a game mode. Respawning and overclocking made strong players stronger and weaker players died over and over again, and that never feels good. I as a good player felt it was very annoying that I had to kill the same people over and over again in a never-ending struggle as game lasted around 20 minutes back then. The aspect of capping the same towers over and over again never appealed to me either, as what's the fun in shooting a defenseless tower? Battle Arena was also discreetly forced on players by having this game mode take a large part of the game mode selection screen. But this was not the only thing. Classic mode seemed to either have not been tested at all by the developers or been completely neglected. It had the feeling that they didn't want the game mode at all, as their past intention of removing it was still there. Classic was made with a new balance of Battle Arena, but everything was stuck at overclocking 1. So everything felt extremely slow and weak. So it was either being stuck in long drawn out games or having very boring games. It took very long and a lot of complaining to get the overclocking level for Classic fixed, and took a lot of time to fix obvious and game-breaking bugs. No, I'm not talking about uncappable towers. It was the inability to aim properly at close targets and therefore making it hard to kill them. This bug was in the game for several months and never really acknowledged by the devs. Massive amounts of information was added to all blocks, like proteinivity, resistivity, diminishing returns, etc. You know, usual stuff. The leveling up was also changed, so that you unlocked higher tier armor before higher tier guns, and this was supposed to prevent rushing through the tiers using weapons. This was due to a lot of complaining about bots in higher tiers being made out of very low tier cubes and therefore being very fragile. Lowest resolution was changed to 1024 by 768 and thereby removing the very common 720p settings. This was later reverted. All versions of electroplates were added as a T10 version. This improved building imagination in T10, and classic game mode standard overclock was set to 4. This happened at the 21st of May, almost a month of release of overclock and respawn. A lot of players left during this time as they didn't care about the Battle Arena or the slow TDM. Curved blocks were added, they were balanced and did offer more variation to the building. But for some reason it was decided that the rounded cube should have a different paint finish than regular blocks, so you would have a great difficulty having a bot that looks super nice. At the 5th of June, arrow rods were added. In my opinion, this simplified the building skill of bots and made some stupid designs possible. Basically, they reduced the building skill of triforcing. And for people who don't know what this is, it is the technique of leading away damage from certain key parts like weapons. Now you just put a rod on it and it will be auto triforced. The most stupid examples of this was the megabots that just had the guns on arrow rods, and they would save a lot of CPU to reinvest in more guns, but didn't sacrifice much as having more guns led to sustainable firepower. After about a month and many players had left, it was basically blamed on veteran players that we went back to lower tiers and Seal Club new players. Therefore, Freedom removed over-tiering of weapons and a capping of max CPU for each tier. This basically killed the usefulness of Teslas in everything that wasn't T10. It was said, quote, "We believe this will provide a much more fair level playing field for users progressing from tier 1 to tier 10 versus more experienced players trying out specialized builds in lower tiers." In the past, at 2014, we said this: "We like to allow variety in Robocraft. If we prevent +2 weapons in lower tier matches, all you see are gun beds. To bring +2 weapons into lower tier battle, you need to keep your quantity down, and thus you suffer in other ways. A new user playing in T1 will typically have 20 T1 SMGs, which has a pro of lots of redundancy. Then, as you become more advanced, you learn that building +2 robots is also fun and a different way of playing. It's a double-edged sword though. The +2s can frustrate new users, but at the same time it shows them what variety can appear in Robocraft." And they were right. What happened in the lower tiers were that gunbeds came and owned everything, and the new users didn't have a chance as they didn't have the money to build these monsters. This was also said in 2014. This is a common thread. We like to have freedom and variation, so allow people to take 20 T1 SMGs on a robot in T1, or a smaller robot with T2 armor and just 2 T3 plasmas cannons. It's actually a fairly fair fight. This was a mark. The Challenger game mode, the biggest seal clubbing event, still remained and was even more powerful as the lower bots didn't have as high tier weapons and the high bot had more redundancy because of the new gunbed kind of style that was implemented because of the limitations. People also said that this would punish art bots, and they were right. Art bots normally used low tier armor to be bigger and get more details, and used few guns but the higher tier to save CPU. Mark responded with, "I know the no OT and CPU caps etc. will hurt artistic creativity in battle mode, but our priority is a fair competitive team game first." A tutorial system was added, it didn't last long, and a much needed ping system was added, as well as a very flawed surrender system and anti-lever system that exists still to this date. Around this time, optimization suffered a lot and the core issue was never fixed. I voiced this and was told that it would be looked into, but no further information about the issue was received. Still to this day, I can barely play Robocraft at 27p on fastest settings. After these changes, the opposite happened, as 3M predicted in 2014 but forgot about. In lower tiers, people would use gunbeds to win, and people would easily tier up by placing one higher tier gun on the bot. More people left the game. After about a month and massive player losses, 3M did a 360, and in late July, Robocraft Unleashed was released. Overtiering and CPU limits were removed. In the same way tiers was removed, and matchmaking would now be made by robot ranking and player level. This should help all the creative builders that you basically said get out to. Not sure how many ever came back. The tech tree was moved to just a tech line, limiting players to just walk the same path. This limited the player's building experience. At this time, hovers got reworked and was said to be even better. Naturally, they were slower than ever and lost the feeling of the past. This was later tweaked, but in my opinion, we are just a shadow of the fun level of the old hovers. During late August, after several losses in players, 3M released a new game mode, The Pit. This was a free-for-all to 20 points compared to unending deathmatch that was talked about in the past. This might have been a good thing, but the comebacks mechanics was terrible, enabling a player that killed 5 people and being in the lead to give a 6-point reward, basically dethroning him. This is still true to this day. The Pit also replaced the seal clubbing event of Challenger mode and boss battles. This followed with a bunch of competitions to highlight the game mode both in lower tiers and in T10. During late September, the Community Robot Factory was released, which enabled you to rent bots with RP or buy bots with EC. Some flaws with the system were that you could not test out bots before renting, rating something didn't always register. If your bot never got rented, it would lower in rating value and basically never be spotted for renting. This is present to current date. The addition of the CRF maybe added a simpler way for people to explore new bots, but got into YouTube build videos that brought people into playing the game. During this patch, Freon continued their anti-team deathmatch by removing it and the pit completely for all but the highest robot ranking bots. All the competition videos in the pit with lower RR bots basically became void. This was claimed to be due to not enough players to fill the game modes. So, adding a new game mode was a bad idea when you had too few players to fill up 2 game modes. A week later, after heavy complaining and uproar from the player base after Freon removed the core game mode TDM, Team Deathmatch was brought back to everyone and Battle Arena was put on the back burner. RP earning and level up speed was increased for TDM during this time. In late October, mech legs were released. This was an extremely tanky movement part that you could get away with only one on your bot. They could also jump no matter how much they weighed, and jump height didn't have any correlation with your weight. Being more tanky and having more upsides than tank tracks, this became one of the core ground movement pits along with hovers. Not many used wheels because they were slow and had a tendency to lose traction and spin out. Tank tracks were overshadowed by mech legs, and the insect leg had been a joke from the start as they randomly would not grip after jumping and you would flip upside down. With this patch, league battles were introduced, giving back some bragging rights for those who cared about playing Battle Arena. The gaining of ranks was very flawed and very inconsistent and took a lot of time to get to work. Now it is a very simple system. If you win, you gain a star, and if you lose a star. At the start, the scores of the winning team was double but hidden from the players to have a greater impact by winning the game. This was later changed to be visible because of players had a hard time understanding why they lost rank. In my opinion, this was flawed and diminished the feeling of having done a good job on your team when you were on the losing side. If everyone did an average job and you did a supreme job but lost anyways, you would go on the bottom half of the score screen. Sometime during all this, we had an issue with ejector seats. These were pilot seats connected with one thruster to it so that you would not get 100% destroyed and you could get away and maybe get healed in the future. This was very frustrating for the users, and we wanted a fix to prevent functional parts to be directly connected to the pilot seat. What we got was the opposite, a pilot seat with even more connection points. This didn't fix ejector seats as it only gave them more options of becoming one, but did add a bit more strength to regular bots. In November, Mark started to write about the vision of Robocraft to get back on track to the game. It was stated that building skill and fighting skill requirement had to be lowered so that new players would have an easier time getting into the game. This I didn't like. Making the game more shallow wasn't gonna get more people into the game. The building mechanics of that time was fairly simple. Protect your seat or you die. But according to Mark, some game mechanics weren't intuitive. Here are some of the statements. I must put a pilot seat on a robot for it to work. Why? Because someone has to control it, right? Only 6 weapons can fire. If you add extra, they will not fire. Why? This is to not make gun spam overpowered, but adding redundancy, and then talking about removing redundancy to have more than 6 guns work, and then later keeping redundancy in the game but even more, like only needing 1 super gun or 3 T10 SMGs is going against what you wanted. Weapons that cannot see your target shoots, and those that can do not. Why? This I could agree with, but this was the last time this got mentioned, and we don't have this in the game. And here is the part that most people reacted to. Damage propagates like electricity through connected cubes. Why? This is what I would call a game mechanic, but the solution to this unintuitive system was to have damage randomly teleport around when you shot a bot, and giving bots a skeleton that could not be destroyed that connected to all functional parts. The uproar was massive, the skeleton idea was scrapped. A new plan was formed, and it would remove the pilot seat. I will talk more about this later. Mark talked about increasing CPU of functional parts and giving us more CPU per level and giving us a choice in having 1 more gun or many more armor cubes. The CPU thing per level never really happened. We later got more levels to grind, but existing functional parts did not get a change, and redundancy still exists heavily to this day. We also wanted to get rid of all armor and place it with one type. I was against this, as it was reducing building skill, but it might have been a necessary evil at the end with the diminishing player base. We also wanted to reduce the weapons and functional parts and to have them be different, having them all balanced so we could get rid of robot rating and only do matchmaking based off CPU. I will dive into this later. 3M wanted to add free garage space. Fair enough. We didn't find it necessary to make everything free. It would have been enough to give some extra away for free, as garage space was a source of income for the company. I still have way over that 25 garage limit, so I can't buy other player spots. They also wanted to change TDM and add respawning. I felt like they never learned their lesson and we yelled so they didn't chase the core game mode into something that me and others already hated. And then they put all of what they were going to do on a roadmap, and this was to be more transparent with the community on what was going to happen. Then on the 17th of December it dropped, the full spectrum combat patch. All cubes turned into one with a paint gun that had the same matte color finish as the previous rounded cubes. And everything else other than cubes could also be painted. What I reacted to the most with this was that 4 colors, orange, white, grey and light blue, was the only 3 colors, and you had to buy premium to get the 16 other colors. I already had premium, so it wasn't a big deal for me, but I felt that it should have been the other way around, with 16 free colors and 4 premium ones. This is just a minor issue, as it doesn't have a real impact on the gameplay, just the building experience. Connecting this to the CRF, people who did not have premium could not buy premium bots with RP. This was a big deal for both players as well as builders that had to paint the bots in 3 colors or else would miss out on a big piece of the CRF market. Some other weird changes was the headlights that sometime in the past didn't give light if you were on a lower graphical setting was changed to GC only, as well as glass. There was no real explanation to this. With removal of all tiers of stuff, all game modes were unlocked again and matchmaking would be done with robot ranking. This was very flawed and badly made matchmaking, and you could get terrible matchups basically having lower tier bots that got into games with megabots. This was never addressed or fixed. It was also mostly invisible on how the matchmaking was done, and you needed to actually see what bots was in the game and make a rough estimate on how high RR we had to realize that you were in very deep waters. Game engine was upgraded to Unity 5 that gave Intel users a buff in FPS, but for most AMD users FPS is still in the gutter. I can play most games in higher settings and get 60 FPS, but can barely get 30 with very low settings in Robocraft. Along with engine changes, the physics also changed. Wheels spun out of control frequently. You had to use non-steering wheels and rudders to make them more stable so that you might be able to use it. Tank tracks completely lost their feel to them. They had no real weight feeling to them, their turning speed was severely reduced, and it felt like you were driving a boat if you used them. They also lacked any ability to go up slopes. A new kind of armor cube shape was introduced, the slope blocks. These cubes were outright overpowered, having a very small percentage of weight compared to regular cubes, but keeping a very high armor value. In the same time, the previous tier X cube was removed. And now comes what I claim to be the actual point where Robocraft started from driving downhill to actually falling off a mountain. Pilot seats were removed and replaced with a CPU-based health that made it so you died when you reached 25% CPU remaining, and auto-healing became a thing. This changed it so that you could not use your building skill to any real advantage. It was add more guns and shoot the other player's guns to win. And all damage you dealt to an enemy was basically pointless if you didn't kill him, as he would regenerate to 100% anyway. The cost of health was based on CPU now. Pass with high CPU but lower health per CPU was suddenly bad. Radar jammers and such that used to be used as a small shield is now a weakness in your bot. electroplates over the T5 variant is outright bad, as it has less health per CPU than regular armor blocks, and with auto heal there's no real advantage other than weight. So the game degenerated into a camping game on the ground. People were afraid of getting out there and engage in combat, as they felt much safer cowering with the buddies back at base. Meanwhile, flyers got super buffed, with no pilot seat to give any weak points in the craft, and auto healing. They could easily deal damage and kill a bot and then just get away. This was most notable with the new bot type Tesseract that was made from the extremely light sloped cubes and dominated the game. It was also around this time that all information about parts, resistivity, diminishing currents, overclock values were removed for no apparent reason. Then, during Christmas, came an unintended exploit of the game economy. Bots on the CRF became 50% off, and the builders would receive 20% of the regular price instead of the regular 10%. This was heavily exploited by players cause it had cost a free RP system. You'd buy your friend's bot, he would get 20% of the sale, and you would sell your bot for 50%. But as you already only paid 50%, you got a complete refund while your friend was up 20%. This escalated so heavy that people reached over 2.147 billion RP, and therefore exceeding the 32-bit number. This caused them to no longer be able to buy stuff, and a 1 billion RP limit was enforced. After nothing was done to balance the game with overpowered auto-healing Tesseract, 3M decided to make a complete anti-air weapon. In 2014 they said this: Robocraft is more about advantage and disadvantage as opposed to rock, paper, scissors. Rail is a disadvantage up close but can counter sort of. So this giant gun that you only really need one of due to size and CPU cost, it became very uncreative to use. Just slap it on and you were done. It also cost massive RP, but with economy in shambles nobody took notice, only the poor people. It was made purely to counter one type of bot, but didn't affect the air wars much, as the air bots would just fly away and heal up again. And after some accuracy and projectile speed buff, it became a good anti-ground weapon, as it could one-shot mega SMGs and had so much health that it could kill other bots engaging it before they killed the gun. The flak was not enough to counter the flyers. Instead of going back to the root of the problem, 3M released a new giant weapon in the form of the lock-on missile launcher. Other than being big, costing massive CPU and RP, only needing one of it, it also came with a no-skill requirement. Just aim, lock on and fire, and the missile would hit most targets. Being able to fire 6 missiles dealing 37,000 damage per missile wasn't considered an issue. The weapon was great versus ground bots that couldn't escape or hide, was great versus planes and helicopters that were too slow, but didn't affect Tesseract, as the small size and maneuverability made it so that missiles often didn't hit, and therefore we could continue on and get healing. So, after 2 weapons made to counter airplay, what could come next? Was 3M going to go back and fix the root of the problem by tweaking auto heal or balancing the sloped cubes that Tesseract was abusing? In early March, 3M completed their first step in realizing their vision with Phase 2. Gone was some of the things we wanted. No increased CPU per level, no higher CPU cost for functional parts, no removal of gun redundancy, was more of a way around. You needed fewer guns and redundancy became a bigger part. Plasma was changed to a round-robin fire method. The initial damage burst damage was said to be lower. With this, so the damage was increased. The opposite was true. With 6 plasma guns, the fire rate was insane and you would hit your target with 10 plasma shots in 1 second. SMG was changed, so now you realistically only needed 3 SMGs, and more added a little faster fire rate, but nothing impressive, and over 6 guns wouldn't make a difference. Railers had to have many rails, or the fire rate would be abysmal. Nano was an unfun yoke on the balance department. You basically only needed 1 or 2 of them, and they could out-heal the damage of 4 enemy bots, no problem. Tesla's was changed to a gun that required activation and dealt constant damage instead of the charges it previously had. This is if you could actually have the hit detection go off on them. Also to mention is that you now can have multiple gun types on your bot. We also were given 2 modules from previous supercomputers that never got released. These were fun and could be used in a tactical sense and was something you needed to consider using as we took a lot of CPU. Then came the next thing to go wrong. We had a birthday bundle containing 3 bots, some containing high-end expensive parts, and it also had 6 months of premium attached to it. And this bundle costed $30 on Steam. Now, somehow, there was a code called Birthday Bundle. No idea how it got leaked, but was a stupidly easy name for a code. So everyone that used the code before it got pulled received 6 months and 3 decent bots. 3M later said that they had removed the premium from the players, but from 2 players I have spoken to that used the code, they still have their premium. So these people slipped through 3M's net, and it made me doubt 3M on how much control they had of their own game information. After 2 anti-air guns came the next gun, and you guessed it. Instead of fixing the problem, we released a new anti-air gun, the Proto Seeker. This was a high rate of fire gun that had auto aim, so required no skill to use. You basically only needed 1, but could get a little more damage if you had more. The gun was extremely annoying, as you could just put it on a rotor blade, fly up in the air, and auto aim shoot everyone that you saw. If you managed to shoot them, the rotor would first die, and they would fall to the ground and go back up again after 10 seconds. The gun also dealt extra damage to electroplates. That is it. They just put that information on the gun instead of an actual value. We as the community have asked over and over again for them to give us a real number, but we never received one. We also asked them why these new easy to use new friendly weapons was only available to high tier players, and they gave us a response that we would understand when tier flattening occurred. So, tier flattening was going to happen and would make everything viable in the game, and each gun would be equal to one another. The increased CPU per level was not going to happen, but instead we would get to level 150. The level 150 is actually misleading, as the levels after 100 would give much less CPU, so it would be more like level 120. What me and all others discovered when this got released, as we didn't had to level up in such a long time, was that Team Deathmatch was completely unviable for leveling up, and had probably been so for ages. We were forced to play Battle Arena if we wanted to level up. Previously, TDM earnings had been reduced, so if you wanted to progress economically in the game, you were also forced to play Battle Arena. So we all felt that this was old 3M emerging, only focusing on Battle Arena and wanting to stop players from playing the core game mode that they at 2 times tried to remove. Megabots got removed, and the part that was the old Mega module became an energy module. The old Mega parts was slightly changed so that they could be used by regular bots. These changes were too small, so the Mega parts remain useless pieces of trash to this day. This does not include the weapons. Railgun got an increased accuracy while moving, so they have better accuracy than all other guns while moving now. On the 13th of April, the next big patch was released, and this aimed to bring back close combat. Instead of balancing the existing parts, we needed a new part that would be so OP that it trumped everything else. This was the Iron Distorter. This was a gun that was big, cost a lot of CPU and RP, and had a lot of health, so there was no real option of shooting it off before it got to you, compared to the forgotten Teslas. This new close-ranged weapon basically 1 or 2 shot at bots, and you could not really do anything against it. During this time, you had to use either Megaplasmas, as they were OP, you could use Flak to try and counter the air, or you could use this new gun to counter everything on the ground. A new Ghost module was also added that let you cloak for 10 seconds. This could be used in fun ways, and it wasn't OP. Then, suddenly out of nowhere, 3M lost their transparency and lost their original vision by introducing and rushing out a crate system in 1 week. This was along with them changing all the guns to be flattened and also introducing a CPU matchmaker that I think is actually the old matchmaking system but using CPU instead of RR. And with these major changes also completely changed the economy of the game. So, let's start with one thing at a time here, as there is much to go through. Most of the guns were reworked to be more equal, so you could be able to use the smallest SMGs alongside the biggest ones. The smallest having a higher fire rate but bigger spread and lower damage, and the bigger having slower, more accurate fire but dealt more damage. What could be noted was that you had a higher nominal count on the low weapons, and that word nominal is a word that I really hate. I would really like Freedom to explain what they mean with it, as it is not the recommended number of guns to get optimal fire rate. The issue for me was that the balance was made to close the gap between the old weapons and the new big guns, instead of having the big guns nerfed. If we take the smallest SMG laser, it deals 5317 damage per shot. This is very rapid fire. Back when the new meta released, the T10 SMG dealt 4891 damage at OC1 per shot. So damage has been ramped up extremely to keep in line with the new big guns that was made to counter the guns that were made to counter the airbots that was made too strong with the auto heal. Meanwhile, everything got a 25% buff to health. So with this extreme change in damage with these massive guns, nothing was made to electroplates, and they have mostly become a burden to your bot, as they are big, easy targetable pieces that have less health per CPU than armor cubes. The TX electroplates have actually received a nerf to their original values, even after a 25% buff. This might have been due to the other balancing, but still, they are less than a shotgun away from being destroyed, or 4 mega SMG shots. Plasma got changed so that you fired smaller plasmas with the lower guns, and this dealt less damage per projectile, but you could fire more of them. At current time, they are one of the worst weapons out there, as they deplete their energy incredibly fast. Back in the day, it was people saying one gun was OP, while someone else said it was a different gun was OP. When you have everyone tell you that one gun is OP, then it's most likely the case. And when everything is equal, why does different variations of gun have a very big difference on the price tag? The spoilers is that they are not equal. Everything other than guns were completely overlooked and never gave any real advantage using lower tier pieces. Felt to me like it was just meh, why bother, just push it out. The matchmaking was changed to be based on CPU instead of robot rating. This caused a lot of problems, meaning that everything deals so much damage and it's balanced around 1500 CPU. So a bot with only 500 CPU dies so much faster than a big bot. I have experienced being a helicopter at 500 CPU and facing flak. You can't do anything against it, as it's balanced to counter airbots with 3 times the CPU. The same goes for all other weapons, as you can very easily put on some guns to reach a good firepower. Then there's also the actual problem with the matchmaking, that it doesn't work properly due to hidden values and no real limit to them. You can do well, and therefore instead of making you face other good players, you face much bigger bots. I have noticed a 300% difference in bot size, and this is nowhere what can be called fair. It doesn't even feel like the matchmaking even cares. Oh, 3 seconds. That's enough. Let's just throw you in with these other randomly chosen bots. But then again, matchmaking has been broken since Robocraft Unleashed, just that nobody took notice it was less detectable. Then there is the big out of the blue change that for some reason had to be mashed into these other game-changing updates and probably took a lot of developer time: the loot crates. These crates was given after every game you played and dropped a set number of items per game mode and random quality of items depending on how good you placed in the game. The old expensive stuff got a low drop chance and a fancy tag like epic or legendary, and cost more than any new player can ever hope to get. Weren't everything supposed to be equal? And as usual, we force us to play Battle Arena for any real game while having the smallest possible reward for Team Deathmatch. Crate quality never felt like there was any difference. I've gotten the same stuff from all crates and have received better stuff with lower quality crates than the high ones. Along with the crates, the entire economy was completely changed. RP was divided by 63 and most item prices were changed. Now you could craft everything, even cosmetic items that we had to pay money for in the past. but you don't earn any of these robots in game modes. You have to recycle the stuff you get. The recycle values sometimes seemed random and felt that little to no attention was given to check the values and see if it was fair. For example, a full cosmetic mask that cost a few dollars in the past now was worth the same as 4 standard cubes. There was a recycle value on them of 0.2% of the forging value. This was later changed to 5%, but it was still a punch in the face to people who invested money in the game to be unique. Also, some things like the noob-friendly weapon lock-on missile launchers is completely unreachable to any new players, as we would either have to be extremely lucky or have to grind for a century to get enough items to recycle into. With the cycle value being so far from the fortune value, new players have a big problem building what they want, but have to use what we receive. The progression system has gone from unlocking better stuff and buying that to advanced, to pray to the gods that you get that 4th steering wheel you need for your bot. If I receive a legendary mech leg, I would have to receive 5 more of them to be able to recycle them into a mega plasma, and legendary items are very rare. The GC currency was completely removed for some reason and changed into real currency that could only be used in the game. So I completely don't see the point in this transition. And of course there was the usual mistake and lack of control of their own system. Me and probably many other players, as I don't think this could be one single occurrence, lost all our GC from the CF. Poof! Gone. It wasn't even recorded in the system beforehand that I had an GC. So who knows how much insight they have on their own stuff. I had video proof and I'm a known and trusted person by one of the devs, so I can get back my stuff if I wanted to. I haven't done so because I don't need more premium and I have all stuff already. But any other player, this might be more tricky as you need basically proof. If it wasn't in their system, it didn't exist really. The use of money is now only used for buying crates which have completely random stuff, so you might just be throwing away your money. And you can also buy premium, which enables all the colors, a 4th position in the buggy platoon, and you get more items in every crate you win. If you don't have premium, you are shown the items you didn't receive, and that can be maddening for players that need one thing that just happened to be in the premium part of the crate. The marketing of a premium player in the game was removed. In 2014, 3M thought on how purchases should not just affect one person. I quote, "It's not just premium. We want to apply this mentality to all our pay-for items. With every game mechanic we have that you can pay for, we want reviewing them all and say, how can we make sure that when a user spends money, both he and the non-spending user benefit, so the game is better for everyone when people spend and not just the spenders." When people say that the game has turned pay to win, I say they are wrong. It has become pay to gamble, which is worse in my opinion. I feel though that the game has gone more towards the pay or you will never advance in the game kind of style. So, to summarize everything in this long speech, adding stuff that have advantages and disadvantages and is not overpowered is good. Adding stuff just for the sake of adding is not actually always good. It can bring back people to the game, but if it's unfair or doesn't have a real place, the players will not stick around. Adding counters in a game is bad. It is better to get rid of the root of the problem and fixing that instead of adding something made to counter the thing the problem made. Reducing required skill both in player and in building is bad. Adding more depth that isn't necessary for the new players but can be used by veteran players is good. Simplifying isn't. Saying that you are trying to be transparent and then release something completely new in a week is bad. Whenever someone from 3M says they have a surprise, everyone gets scared because of premium random changes. Having a matchmaking that is unfair drives people away and removes the fun more than completely random rewards does. Adding some quality assurance to prevent reoccurring and obvious bugs and mistakes that is instantly detectable by players. Having one dev open 300 crate and say, yeah, this is totally unfair, would have been great. Or having a bug that was said to be fixed actually be present in the game is stupid. If it is about balance, there are many in the community that can and are willing to help you. Lower CPU items are more versatile and give more creative freedom than massive parts. Saying everything is equal while some stuff is more expensive and more powerful doesn't work well for the new player, or existing ones for that matter. Completely removing information is bad and adding pointless information is pointless. Like how much extra damage does the PSK deal to shields? What happened to diminishing returns? If you're testing out something new and are having a good time due to you are killing everything, then it's an indication that it might be overpowered. Winning and killing is fun, but losing and dying is not. Never change TDM. No, we don't want respawning in it. Respawning is frustrating because that meant you died and will probably die more times instead of taking a fresh new game, and this reduces frustration. So that was it, I think. I hope you guys enjoyed it, as this script I'm reading from actually took a long time to write and gathering information for. This game has been one of my favorite games and I have almost 2,500 hours invested in it. It would be a shame to see it turn into a shadow of itself as it currently is and eventually completely disappear as I feel it is currently doing. Please leave a comment below of your favorite moments of the game. This has been Stalnore signing out.